Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. If we haven't met, I'm Margot Stedman. I'm Education and Community Engagement Director here at the Rockford Symphony. And today we are talking about percussion. Yay! So, percussion instruments, they are only limited by your imagination because they are anything that you can strike, scrape, or shake. So, with that in mind, we have one of our percussionists here with us today, Colin Boltz, and he is going to show us a bunch of different percussion instruments. He's going to play some things for us. We're going to learn new things together. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll be watching for them and I can ask Colin those questions. And we've been playing with the sound to adjust it. So if you do have a sound issue, maybe drop that in the chat too, and we'll try to keep adjusting as we go. We think we figured it out. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Colin.
All right. Hello, teachers, students. It's so great to be here. So great to kind of work on some instruments today with you and talk a little bit more about the percussion family. As Marco mentioned, she hit it right on the nail on the head. It's really anything that you can hit, scrape, gosh, I don't know, ruffle together, make interesting sounds with. So that what really makes percussion so unique. We're different from a conventional instrument where we have so many different sounds to work with. In fact, some of our favorite movies and scary sounds that we hear in our Superman movies or whatnot all come from percussion and come from different types of extended techniques on percussion instruments. So we're really kind of crafting different sounds in our head all the time, trying to think of what materials are best used on different instruments. So really, exactly as Margot said, it's really anything you can scrape, anything you can beat, anything you can hit, and that does not include your little brothers and sisters, so do not try that at home. But basically, it's everything and all and above. So we have a lot of different materials to work with. We have things like wood. Wood is a very common material for percussion. We have things like metal, of course, which came around a little later. One of the very first percussion, materials you could say, and one of the very first instruments ever made. Can anybody take a guess what material that might have been made out of? Go ahead and put that in the chat. We'll just see if anybody gets it right. The very first, you could say, material that percussion instruments were made out of was actually skin. So we think of skin as kind of another material that really creates the drum. And nowadays, they're less so skins, but more drum heads. So for instance, this is kind of an old looking drum. This is maybe what we can imagine, one of the very first drums, right? You have essentially what was a hollowed out log, right? Where you have a cavity in here that creates the sound. You have a skin, and now they've used plastic and things like that, although this is actually a real goat skin. And then they usually will string it together somehow. This has basically a rope kind of tension system. And so you're going to hear a very boomy kind of sound with all of these materials combined. Right? So together with all these different materials, now we've created this drum, right? So basically, all percussion instruments have some sort of material association with them, whether it's going to be different types of wood, different types of metal, different types of maybe skin, things like that. So that's really the basis. Now, let's go ahead and talk about how some of these work, how some of these different materials are even used. So again, we've got plenty of different instruments here. Can anybody guess what shape or instrument this is called? It's called a triangle, right? And it has a very beautiful metallic kind of shimmery sound. That's because it's made out of metal, of course, right? We have, again, wood instruments that are either just struck by themselves together. These are, for instance, called claves. And they produce a very kind of warmer tone. Anything with wood usually has a little bit warmer of a sound kind of than metal, right? And then we also have wood instruments. I think I used wood instruments, or skin instruments, sorry. We also have skin instruments like the drums and such. We can also have a combination though. For instance, Take a guess at what materials these use, or this instrument uses, right? This is now a combination where we have a tambourine, a head, or a skin combined with metal or jingles, right? And so together we have this instrument called a tambourine, which kind of uses both of those kind of elements. So we have all sorts of combinations. I'm going to try to quiz you guys, see if you can guess. This is kind of maybe a trick question. Which instrument, family, or material this would be made out of? So this is actually one of the most unusual instruments I've ever come across. When I was touring with an orchestra in Europe, I came across this instrument. We don't really have them much in the States, and the reason is because the way that they're made, or I should say grown. So essentially, take a listen here and take a look. We've got this instrument in front of me. It's kind of hard to see, but take a look here and go ahead, type in the comments what material would you say that this instrument is made out of? This might be a little bit of a trick question, and I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. This is what's known as a water drum. So again, it has a very beautiful tone. It's pitched. Now we have a difference in pitch versus non-pitch. So here's the pitch, right? We have a very pretty tone on that. Versus when we use special effects, we get less of a pitch and more of the effect. So one effect that we typically get is what we call like a glissando. Where you can actually get pitch bend and create, instead of just the one pitch, you can get more of these pitches and kind of an effect out of it. So this is one of my favorite instruments called the water drum. I don't know if we put the comments in there.
People are guessing wood and watermelon.
Oh, hey, pretty good here. So yeah, wood is probably the closest we could associate this with, and it's made out of a gourd. So whoever guessed watermelon was very, very close. This is a giant gourd that was grown in the sun deserts of Africa, the Middle East, ancient Persia, some of those areas. And they're grown to such a large size that we're able to kind of hollow them out and do this. That's why I was saying they're not really found in the US, is because we actually don't have a growing season that can kind of grow something like this. So yes, this is made out of a gourd, essentially. And whoever guessed that, watermelon, very good, bravo, that was excellent. So one of my favorite drums, this is very interesting to me, and it's used in Persian music a lot. There's also, examples in orchestral music, but this is definitely a rare instrument that, I think every percussionist has one of those, fun stories or fun instruments, and, we're collectors by nature. So this is definitely one of my pride and joys. I just wanted to share that with you. So very good guesses, very good guesses. Now, moving on. There are different ways that we can use these materials and how we strike them or hit them. So for instance, I was mentioning movie effects, right? If we're watching our favorite action hero film, right, we can get both scary sounds, both exciting sounds, right? All based on, these different techniques and special effects that really us as percussionists can get. So imagine, actually, and I have friends and teachers who have done this. I've actually done a little bit of this myself. In film studios, typically, most of the musicians are percussionists. There's just a ton of percussion instruments. Imagine your favorite movies, Minions, or any of your favorite, animated movies. It's just a ton of drums and sound effects and everything. Because us percussionists are really integral or really important in making some of these effects, whether they're scary or exciting or whatever. So one effect I'm going to show you today, and this is a little bit unconventional. You guys may have seen a string demonstration, right? So you may recognize this, all right? This is what's called a bass bow or a string bow, okay? Now, we can actually use these as well, right? So when we think of creating effects with percussion, instead of just striking or hitting something, now we're actually going to use a bow maybe to kind of get a new effect or a new sound. So I don't know if you can see it too well here. I've got a cymbal in front of me, okay? You can probably take a guess what instrument material this is made out of, right? And because it's a metal, what's really fun about metal is you get all these shimmery and exciting tones and qualities out of them, right? So now I'm gonna use this bow, and I'm just gonna bow lightly all the way up, and you're gonna hear, I don't know, maybe go ahead and type in what type of sound this maybe sounds like to you. What type of adjective? Is this scary? Is this exciting? Or is this fast? What do you think this sound is like in maybe, let's say, maybe your favorite movie or so?
Good words here. Shiver, scary.
Ooh.
I like the word shiver. Yeah.
Shiver's a good one. I like that.
A sword. They said it could be a sword.
Oh, yes, yes. That is so common, right? You get that sword release, and it's basically the cymbal, right? That's just shing, right? So, exactly. I think of also car accidents or all these harsh tones that they're using. And actually, a little trivia if you guys want to know what the term for this is, because really in movies, it's hard to capture all of those sounds together, right? When they're doing the video. So what they do is they add all this extra audio, I'm sorry. They add all this extra audio on top of the video. Things like these sounds, right? Or even, for instance, footsteps, right? They have to add those in, right? In order for us to hear them in the movie. Does anybody know the term? This is a tricky one. It starts with an F, okay? And it's named after a guy.
No guesses.
No guesses? All right, this is a tricky one. So the term for this, all these added sounds, they're called Foley Effects, okay? So if you're ever studying that in music or in film, you'll see that where all these extra sounds, special effects sounds, like you're saying, shiver sounds, if you want to get that really terrifying, horror film type sound, right? You need to use these Foley effects to really get that, right? So that'll be your term for the day, Foley effects, okay? All the added footsteps and everything, right? That they add in movies. Okay, so anyways, that is one technique that we can use on, for instance, a cymbal or a metal object, right? So we have all sorts of different ways that we can create different types of sounds. We can use different types of beaters and plastic or wood or soft yarn. We can use all these different types of mallets to get different types of tones. So really, I like to think that percussion goes beyond just, I guess, one instrument or one family. In a way, we're more like, I guess, kind of tradesmen or collectors, where we collect sounds, we collect different types of just things that really are interesting to us, whether they're bird calls. And with percussionists, you never know when you're going to use them, as silly as this is. We use them in orchestra concerts all the time. I've used turtle shells. Just this last week, we did a concert playing on turtles that were, unfortunately deceased from natural causes, right? And we played on the shells because on a turtle shell, you actually get 3 pitches. So that was a really interesting way of kind of, again, now exploring percussion in another way with a new instrument family of really, bones and skeletons. And that's true. We've used jawbones in the past. All sorts of different types of collections of sounds are important for us as percussionists. I'm going to grab one other. That when I talk about Foley effects and I talk about movies, this is a famous one. This is actually a very famous percussionist who I believe he passed away recently, but very famous for inventing instruments. He was one of these guys who was doing a lot of movie sounds and was growing up in this era, the 60s and 70s, with Star Wars and all these big time movie soundtracks. So he was actually kind of one of the inventors of all these. So, and that's something that I think we do a lot in percussion. We actually have to invent and create our own sounds sometimes. And there are different ways that we do that. I can kind of show you some examples. So Emil Richards is his name, the percussionist, invented what's called the pop gun. And maybe it's one of those familiar sounds maybe you'll hear in a Tom and Jerry or a something cartoon. So maybe you'll recognize this sound, right? So another one of my favorites, right? Because really essentially what it is, it's like a wine cork with a tube, a PVC tube basically, and just a string attached to it, right? But together you get that very comical. So again, with percussion, it's all about what you can kind of imagine as far as the sound. We get asked to do creative things all the time, trying to get different sounds or substitutes or just different types of timbres and qualities, which I think make us unique. We are really kind of creators in our sound. And I think every percussionist takes that pretty serious, where they make sure they are using the right mallets and the right size mallet. As silly as this is, a 3/4 inch ball versus a 1-inch ball. Different things like that, that percussionists are always obsessing about to get that right sound, because really that's the only control that we have. We're not producing a sound. We're not, Margot, she's a vocalist, and I'm not sure if you guys know that, but Margot's an excellent vocalist, she's musically trained and everything. And as a vocalist, you're producing your sound completely, right? You don't have really any assistance. You're just using, your beautiful, body and your vocal, right? Percussion, it's the opposite, right? We have none of that. So with us, we are constantly thinking about what we're hitting, what we're scraping it with, all of those different things, because that ultimately will impact our sound. So a couple more instruments I'm just going to share with you guys today. I've been doing a lot of talking. Yeah.
What's this big instrument you're in front of?
Yes. So I was going to say, we have a very common instrument, and this is a part of kind of the wood family. This is called a xylophone, and we have much bigger versions of these. We have marimbas, we have all sorts of different types of wood keyboards, and the difference is the way that it's tuned, but that could get real technical. I'll spare you guys on that for now. So this is basically a wood tone instrument that creates a pitch, and we use all the time in the orchestra, which maybe you've heard it. It sounds a lot like this. So just a little example of kind of how using your wrists and your mallets, the way that you're hitting the instrument, can get kind of a melodic type feel. Now it's still very percussive, right? You probably still hear a lot of tickiness. So that's something that we're always working with. I could get real technical and explain, but we have different beating positions on the instruments that help us with that. So really 4 different good beating positions that we are always thinking of, making sure we're using that right beating position. And it'll change based on if we're going up or down or all sorts of different things. So this is a beautiful instrument. I'm using hard mallets. A marimba is going to sound much more deep and have a lot of beautiful tone. We actually just produced a website a video on the RSO website that you can check out. So,
I linked it, yes.
And that's where you can hear this marimba. It's a beautiful sound. I think it's about 11 minutes in or so. Beautiful, beautiful tone. I encourage you to check it out, because the marimba is actually probably my favorite instrument. It's really where we learn how to be musical and how we play, I guess, very melodic or expressive things with percussion. And that's something that we rarely do. We don't get a chance to be very expressive. It's Something that we try to create in every opportunity that we get. Even if it's a drum, we try to be expressive and try to show direction and control and things. But it's truly on these melodic keyboard instruments that we really get to kind of have some expressiveness and kind of show a little bit more character, I guess. So I'll just play one more thing for you guys on this one. I haven't done this one in a while, but this is another example of kind of an expressive, now animated, kind of quirky, fun character that we can kind of get. Something like that. So that's one of the excerpts that we'll play in the orchestra every now and then. It's supposed to be really fun. It's the birth of Kiji, this new emperor in Russian mythology, I believe. So Kiji coming and being born into life and everything. So very fun and charismatic, right? So and these are all things that we want to think about too. Whether you're playing a clarinet or a piano or a keyboard instrument like this, is really feeling that character and trying to express that character kind of internally, I think is going to show in your music and really come across better with your instrument. So
Colin, can you show us the big instrument that's behind you that we see on stage a lot with the orchestra?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know it'll take you far away, but we only have a few minutes left and I want everyone to see it.
No, it's good. You got to keep me on track. I'll talk forever. So you can tell I love percussion. All right, so now I'm back over in my timpani land, or kettle drums. These are some of the very first drums or percussion instruments ever integrated with the orchestra. So typically, yeah, you'll see these drums a lot in the orchestra, right? They're very big, of course. Timpani, kettle drums, all sorts of different names for them. So maybe you'll recognize some of these sounds. Who knows? Let me know if this is too loud. I don't know if this will be or not. Can you guys hear that okay?
Yes, that was great.
Awesome. Let me just play one more thing for you. This is from Britain's Young Person's Guide. Maybe you've been to an educational concert, you've come to the RSO, and you've seen us play live. This is a very, very famous piece that really showcases different instruments in the orchestra. And this was one of the little timpani kind of moments that I'll show you guys, because as a timpanist, we can also try to be expressive and musical and try to create phrasing and melodies. So here's a little bit less bombastic of a timpani example for you. All right, hopefully you can hear that okay.
Yeah. So we have just a few minutes left. So before we wrap up, we do have a question. They want to know, how long have you been playing percussion instruments?
Great question. 4th grade. Summer of 4th grade, I started with my neighbor on drum set. And then 5th grade is when I actually got started with with summer lessons, private lessons in the school system. So great question. And then I'll say this too. I didn't really take music. I practiced it every week, and I was very, good about going to my lessons, but I didn't think of it as a career all the way really until junior year of high school. So just for those of you who are exploring career options, I had no idea myself that it could turn into a career really until about junior year. So yeah, that was me. Yep.
That was great. And we do have a comment. I think it's fun. They think the timpani sounds like when a monster comes in Scooby-Doo.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much for showing us so many different instruments, talking about all the ways that percussion can give us different ways to express our emotions, to give us different ways to express different sounds, sound effects, and all
Yeah.
sorts of things. I know I've learned something new, and I think everyone else has today too. And we just hope that everyone had a great time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me, everybody. It was such a pleasure. Yep.
Okay, bye.